Hey, folks, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio. Thanks to all of you who have subscribed and all of you who have been tuning in, watching all these interviews. I feel so flattered by all the guests that I've had here on my channel. And not that long ago, we had this special guest on. If you want to check out show number 38. He was one of Brian Epstein's personal assistants. He also worked with Tony Bramwell at the Saville Theatre, and was, I guess you call him a studio roadie for the Beatles later on in the last few years when they were together. He was a tremendous guest on the show. Back in 2015, he released a book on Kindle, which is still available. Who's the Redhead on the Roof? And by the way, the title refers to the fact that he was on the Apple Rooftop when the Beatles gave their performance there. So we welcome back Kevin Harrington. Hello, Kevin.
Thank you, Ken. Good to be back.
You know, this has to be a special time in a way because of all the attention being given to Let It Be with the archival box set that just came out. And now, as we speak, we're right in the middle of all the hoopla for the Get Back documentary. But I thought we would start off the interview. As most fans know, the Get Back book was reissued. And anyone that's picked up a copy will notice that there are a few photos of this dashing young man with red hair, which you can find on several pages here. And this is at the beginning of the book, with a list of all the people who were working with the Beatles at the time. There's Kevin at the bottom there. Remember when any of these photos that are in the book were taken? And
no, God, Lord, no.
Or what the circumstances were?
No, no. Oblivious to all of that.
Okay. Well, this is one with the Beatles on the Apple Rooftop, and you're standing right next to Mal Evans. Let's see if we can get that any closer.
Yeah, there's Mal, there's Lindsay Hogg, there's that Paul.
There's Mal in the back with the glasses, and you're right next to him.
Yeah. Lindsay Hogg, Paul, Ringo, and is that Tony Richardson? Could be.
Have to look. Looks like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another one that's in the book. And there's one here that I found interesting. When the Beatles were performing, and you're behind them in the back, and I'm trying to figure out if you're just observing them or doing anything at all that involves work at the time.
Just observing, just hanging around, just waiting. Yeah, just just something to do. Look over the banister. No.
Okay. On one of the podcast shows that I do, Things We Said Today, one of my co-hosts was talking about how wasn't it dangerous to be up there on the Apple Rooftop and there wasn't that much protection on the edge of the roof?
No, there was some scaffolding up there. There was a barrier. It's not like it is today, but there was a barrier. It was safe enough.
Yeah. Well, I bet there's so many fans that would have given anything to have been in your shoes. That's for certain. And yeah, so we talked a lot about how it all started for you working for Brian and then through the end of the Beatle years and being on the Apple Rooftop. But I thought we'd talk about some of the people that you had a friendship with and a work relationship with. And most especially, Mal Evans comes to mind, and we'll talk about Neil Aspinall too. What can you tell us about what it was like to work with Mal?
What was it like? It was very easy. It was, yeah. I mean, Mal knew his job. He'd been with them for years. It was very relaxing. There was no uptightness. There was nothing like that. It was almost like serene all the way through. There'd be, it's the only way I can kind of describe it. It was just laid back. You know, there was, you know, occasionally, you know, you'd have to hurry up and all that stuff, but generally it was just laid back. It was okay, you know, we got to be there. Okay, right, well, let's go. You know, it was wonderful. It was easy. It was just being taught by Mal was just easy. You know, I mean, because Mal taught me everything about roadieing that I needed to know at that time. You know, which was, you know, tuning a string, changing guitar strings, really. You know, and sorting out the drum kit and all the machine heads and, you know, the dampers and all of that. So, and it was kind of just, it was very easy. It was very laid back, as you can imagine. It's got to be in the studio. You know, the last thing any musician wants is an uptight roadie about. You know, that's not what they want. What they want is just not to be disturbed. And Mal was personification of that. You know, just, yeah, that's okay. That's what we got to do. Let's just go and do it. You know, and just very quietly get it done. It was, yeah, it was good. It was good.
So most of the time you just followed Mal's directions, or were there times when the Beatles themselves asked for it?
In the first 2-3 weeks, while I was getting my feet, it was, you know, I would watch what Mal was doing, or Mal would tell me what to do. And, you know, it was the first day he left me alone in the studio, which when I really just crapped it, you know, just like, it's like, oh dear, I'm all alone with the boys. And that was a bit hairy for me, but just only on a personal level. They didn't want anything, you know. I was lucky, you know, they were just starting the session. So once they start the session, you know, you can really leave them for an hour and a half, 2 hours, because they don't want anything. They've got what they need, which is their instruments and the four of them together. And so Mal had to go out, and Mal said, I'm just going out for half an hour. You'll be all right. And just left. And I just, you know, thought, okay, let's hope nothing happens, you know. And nothing did happen. You know, it was lovely. It was lovely.
Yeah. Were the Beatles the type of people who, realizing you're this young guy working for them, they're the biggest band in the world, you must feel some nervousness or some kind of pressure that they would put you more at ease? Or did you find them at times to be very demanding?
No, they were never demanding. Never, ever demanding. That was the beauty of it. You know, it was from the first day when I sat down with George on the floor and just spoke with him for about 10 minutes. That's when I kind of, you know, my inner self relaxed. You know, like this could be okay. You know, but with Mal was like the presence that was the guiding presence for me. You know, whatever Mal said, you see, with Mal and Neil and Mal and Neil and Mal, it doesn't matter. You know, when I first saw them, I think I might have said this before. I was an office boy at NEMS, and Laurie, anyway, Laurie McCaffrey, the receptionist, telephonist, said to me, "Oh, Mal and Neil are coming in today." And I said, "Who's Mal and Neil?" And she said, "They work for the boys." And I said, "Who are the boys?" And she said, "The Beatles." Okay. And then later on in the day, these two guys walked in that were just like, wow, you know, just the presence, the command that they had. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And I think they'd just come back from the Philippines. And so that was just, yeah, that's who they are. There was just this presence, you know. And then that was all right, you know, like Neil's throwing out all these sort of duty-free cigarettes. Do you want a cigarette? Do you want a cigarette? You know, it's like, yeah, I'll have a cigarette, you know. And then kind of just over the years, I kind of got to know him a little bit. you know, where when I eventually started working for Mr. Epstein as his personal office boy, I had to go around to Mal and Neil's flat occasionally, you know, to drop off visas or tickets or whatever. And they were all like always really sweet and really pleasant and really nice, you know. So even at NEMS and all of that, it was laid back. It was, except for an office boy who's running around like a blue-ass, you know, idiot, you know, delivering all in there. But when you got to meet them, it was really nice and easy, you know. Now Neil was very formidable man. He was no nonsense. He was all right. That's why I really loved Neil, because he was all right. In fact, he was the one that first, when I was doing, or when they were doing Magical Mystery Tour, and I was running around with, you know, film and going to cutting rooms and everything else, and dropping off film to them at preview theatres. It was Neil that said, "Hey, come on in, Kevin, and I'll show you what we've been doing." And that's when I first actually sat down in a room with Mal, Neil, and the Beatles. And that was in a small preview theatre in Wardour Street somewhere. And so it kind of, you know, that's the sort of guy Neil was. You know, he knew that I was part of them somehow, but it was welcoming in. It wasn't, you know, okay, you're an office boy, bugger off, you know, go and do the next job. It was deep. I went in, so there was always that friendliness there, which I clicked onto, which was nice. And then, you know, I got to know them a little bit more, you know, just through that, and then through still various, you know, going to their flats and things, and, you know, but yeah, Neil was definitely formidable in his outlook. You know, it was, the boys were it, and that's it. You know, there's no, the boys are number one. That's it. Nothing gets in the way of that. You know, and so yeah, and eventually when Apple started, and I fortunately managed to get a job at Apple. You know, and Neil took over running Apple. The dynamic in the studio changed. Before it was Mal and Neil. Mal would do all of equipment. Neil would do all of the management stuff. Whether it's Ringo saying, "Oh, I need this for a couple of weeks' time," or Paul saying, "Oh, I want some tickets," or, you know, whatever it was. And if there was anything to do with equipment, Mal would do it.
Right.
Well, that dynamic changed when Neil started full-time at Apple. That's where I was fortunate enough to have somehow, with half a bag of groceries, managed to get into Apple Studios, get into EMI Studios, you know, and that's when Mal invited me in. Well, I mean, I couldn't drive, right? So when we were doing Hey Jude, and yeah, this thing, I didn't have a car. So certainly with Hey Jude, Paul used to give me a lift. And one day I was in the Apple, and Neil said, "You can't drive, can you?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, that's fucking useless, isn't it?" Yeah. He says, "Well, you better learn to drive then." And so I just went out and I started getting driving lessons, and, you know, and then, yeah, 2.5 weeks later, I've got my license. So, but they paid for that. You know, I said, "I can't afford all of these lessons." And they said, "We'll pay for it," you know, and so they got me my driving license even, you know.
But when you say things changed once Neil started to run Apple, did Neil's job change and Mal's job change in any way?
Yeah, you see, that's
in
the
what
thing.
way?
Well, Mal then started taking over the management role. Mal, I need this next week. Mal, I need, you know, whatever. And I was then doing what Mal used to do, which was the equipment.
Gotcha.
Right. So, you know, that's why I was the equipment manager, and now Mal was sort of almost like the manager, you know, the tour manager, as they now call these days.
Hmm.
Those days they were just roadies, but in reality, Neil was a tour manager and Mal was the equipment manager.
Interesting. Was there ever a time when Mal or Neil sat you down and told you this is the protocol? This is what you don't ask of the Beatles, or
No. I, from a very early age, from the very beginnings at NEMS, Laurie McCaffrey, who was from Liverpool as well, one of the original Liverpudlians that came down to London with NEMS. She says, no, but you don't talk about the Beatles. That was the key. You don't talk about the Beatles, period.
You mean to your friends or anybody? That's
no.
Keep your job to yourself?
Yeah, basically. But I was an office boy, so it didn't really matter, But if you hear anything, I didn't hear anything about the Beatles for 18 months, really. It was, I would be delivering letters, but I didn't know what they were doing. I never heard anything. I was just an office boy. So all of that, what they were doing was behind closed doors and things. But even then, it was still, you never talk about the Beatles. It's so private that they are a closed book. And so that was the philosophy that I'd grown up with for the past 2 years. And so I didn't need telling. And because I'd been associated with them from like the NEMS and Brian Epstein days, I was kind of, for want of a better word, I was like in, I was accepted, really, right. I suppose, that I could be trusted. And I think that was the thing. I don't think Mal could ever have gone, I need a roadie. I need somebody to do the equipment. Right, I'm going to go and get a roadie. That would have been no good because it wouldn't have been trusted. Is my own take on it.
Mm-hmm.
I was trusted. I was almost an insider. But, in reality, they knew me for who I was, and I was trusted. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got the job, because Mal knew me from all that time ago and knew that I could be trusted, and I never let him down on that one.
And also, in a way, from the way you described yourself when I interviewed you before, you didn't come across as a major Beatle fanatic,
No, I wasn't. No.
And in its own way, I bet that their company must have found that appealing. That it was a job to you. It was a job to you.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a job to me. But you see, I think a lot of that has got to do with meeting all the other bands from NEMS, like Jerry and the Pacemakers, and Billy J and Paddy Klaus and Foremost and Scylla. So, that kind of pop stardom didn't really mean much to me. Even growing up, like, doing all of that when the Beatles, Love Me Do and all of that stuff. Yeah, I love their music, but I was not like a besotted fan. It was just good music. I never thought about that.
And you yourself didn't want to get any kind of public attention for your work with the Beatles.
Well, no, you don't. You're behind the scenes. That's
right.
You're meant to be behind the scenes, behind the camera, which I like to think I was up until that day on the roof.
So, everything that I've ever heard about Mal was that he was a true, loyal friend, a confidant of the Beatles. He would do anything in the world for them. And I guess, based on what you're saying, that's exactly how Neil was.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. They both worked together looking after the boys. That was their role in life at that time. Well, it still would have been now, I suppose, if everything had panned out nicely, but it didn't. yeah, they were the number one priority. You know,
Mm,
I mean, Neil, you see, you get a certain loyalty when you start with a group like Neil started with the Beatles, which is basically playing clubs, and then you advance to all of this international mayhem.
right.
You know, there's a certain bond that, you know, is unbreakable almost. You know, and Neil and Mal had that. You know, they went through the bad times along with the band. You know, and that's, you know, I've been with that way with a few bands, and you do click. It does bring you all together. So I know why they were so close.
Mm.
You know, there was a bond formed between them that was just, yeah.
When you've been through the most extraordinary experiences like
I
Mal
know.
and Neil did, yeah, you can understand why why they bond like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
did you ever witness any time when, you know, I'm sure that there were moments when the Beatles felt pressure to keep delivering, you know, one great song after another, one great album after another. In the studio, maybe there might have been some tension. Were there times when you noticed that with the band, or when you noticed that with Mal and how he worked with the band and observed things with them in the studio?
Um, well, I think most of the time, sort of Mal was kind of like an observer. You know, he certainly had his own input. You know, whatever it was, there was, you know, Mal would always input because he was allowed to, because he was been with them for so long. You
Right.
know, you always, when you get that sort of rapport, you always put in some sort of input. You know, regardless of whether it's meaningful or not. So there was always that. I mean, the only time I can really, you know, it was like when they were arguing towards the end, you know, and Mal was not, you know, Mal wasn't happy with that. Mal knew that there was something wrong. You know, they're always arguing. Well, he didn't like it because he'd not heard it before. This is not constant bickering, but near enough. You know, constant sort of arguing, and you know, but as soon as they pick up their instruments, that's it. It's gone, and they're back to being the Beatles instead of four separate people having a discussion about business. You know, so yeah, Mal didn't like it, I must admit, but you know.
The arguing part that you're referring to, is that more like towards Abbey Road when the album was being recorded, or are you talking about the Let It Be sessions? Anything specific? A specific time?
I won't go into anything specific, Cam, but it was towards the end, you know, when Klein came in, and you know, that was the apple cart. You know, when Klein came in, then that's when these discussions kind of started hitting off, really, I suppose.
Hmm. As someone that was an observer yourself, you know, I mean, the more you study the Beatles, you realize how complicated the whole situation was in their relationships. There were many reasons to me why they broke up. But can you actually say, in your opinion, because I know Paul usually puts it all down to Allen Klein and the fact that the three of them signed to be, for Allen to be their business manager, and Paul wanted his in-laws to represent the Beatles, that was the single biggest reason from your observances? Because, you know, I don't have to tell you all the circumstances between, you know, John wanting to do more with Yoko and George feeling frustrated that he wasn't getting as much of his material on Beatles albums and so on. It's a lot of reasons why I believe they broke up, but do you tend to believe the way that Paul has explained it, that it really all came down to Allen
I
Klein?
think so. I still somehow believe, and this is only my own opinion, that I think if Mr. Epstein had been alive and they'd had the same sort of situation with George wanting to do more songs and Yoko coming along, I got a feeling that I think Mr. Epstein would have sorted something out where you know, maybe he would have said, you know, okay, just have a break for a year, you know, go and do your own thing, you know, and then come back in a year's time. But I think once Allen Klein had come in and got his fingers in the pie, the other three signed. Yeah, I think that was the game over. I personally think.
Mm.
You know, I still like to believe in my own heart that if he hadn't have been around, something would have been sorted out. I think, you know, I could be wrong, but who knows?
I just wanted to get your take on this because there'll always be people like myself who have felt that they outgrew being in a band.
Well,
And
there
yet
is
at the
that.
same- What's that?
This is the thing. There is that as well.
Yeah.
You know, so there is a possibility that they would have just gone, okay, you know, we've done all we can as a group. Let's split up, which wouldn't have been as animostic as, you know, right, I'm leaving and, you know, you can all of that stuff, you know. So, because the way they split up, it didn't seem as though there was any chance of them getting back together.
You felt that as soon as John
a lot
told
of animosity, there was, you know. I mean, time eventually, you know, killed that animosity, but you know, there was a lot of animosity about. So, yeah.
Did you know when John said to the others that he wanted a divorce, so to speak? Did you find out about it at that time? Or was it kept kind of secret?
I can't remember, to be honest, Ken. I really can't remember. There was so much going on. You know, I can't remember. Yeah.
It's so easy to get trapped in this whole web of, you know, what was going on at that time. And you've got four fascinating and very different personalities who all deep down loved each other and would do anything in the world for each other. I still believe that, you know, to this day. And you hear so many conflicting reports, you know, and so it makes it even more fascinating. I mean, for one thing, and I defend George Harrison so much because he was flourishing as a songwriter and just getting better and better towards the end of the Beatles. And then he certainly proved that with All Things Must Pass. And, you know, even after Paul McCartney made the announcement through the question and answer sheet that came with the first McCartney album, you know, even after that, George was acting as though the Beatles were still going to continue. And it would be, he said, selfish for them to break up. And even at that time, he was so involved with other Apple artists in wanting to produce them and writing songs for them. And so he was very much invested in that whole time period with Apple and with the Beatles. And I'm sure he also wanted to do solo stuff on his own, but I'm sure there's a lot of insecurity there when he never really put out a full-blown pop album. You know, so much going on just in him alone.
Yeah.
And it's beyond fascinating to study this. And, you know, I listen to a number of podcast shows that go deep into this whole thing and try to explore the Beatles psychologically. And it's really, it's tough to do. It really is.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's why I really have nothing to do with them, so to speak. You know, I that's why I say I'm not an expert. You know, I worked for them for 2 years in the closest sort of position one can, I suppose, in the studios. But you know, I leave that to experts and to try and figure out, because I can only go by what I learned after I left them. You know, that's the thing. I'm sure if I'd known the 16 years that I learned on the road. If I'd worked for the Beatles after that, then I would have understood a lot more. And, I kind of understand. I know now, but I have a lot more understanding now of how groups work. And I didn't then, you see. That was the thing. I was just the naive young pup, just starting out, and that's why I sort of love Mal and Neil, The funny thing is, I saw Neil in 2004 or something, 2005, and he said to me, "Yeah, Kevin, how did you get the job?" And I said, "Well, I assumed you said yes to it, because, you're the boss. I assumed you agreed with Mal that was all right." He says, see, Neil's memory did go a bit. So, but yeah, it was, and then I told him, of how I started that day. It's, with half a bag of shopping and stuff. And, okay, yeah, that's all right then. It was lovely. When I was working for Mr. Epstein, I love this story. When I was working for Mr. Epstein, this is about Mal and Neil. I think I told you I was asked to direct traffic at Mr. Epstein's housewarming party.
Right.
And the one thing I spotted or didn't spot was Mal and Neil at that party. And so I asked Mal during one of the sessions, where were you? And he said, "Oh, yeah, Neil and I were coming and we dropped some acid and we kind of got lost and we were driving around for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And we got there at about 6 o'clock in the morning, just as John was leaving." And at the same time I saw Neil, I said, "Neil, you didn't make it to that party, did you?" He said, "No." I said, "Me and Mal dropped some acid and we're driving around for hours and hours and hours." And we stopped at this rural police station, this one block with one desk sergeant in it. And we walked in to get directions and I'm asking this sergeant at the desk, "How do I get to so-and-so?" And all he can hear is Mal looking at this big map on the wall with all these B roads and A roads in different colours. So it's just like this artwork when you're on acid. And all he can hear is Mal going, "Oh, wow, man. Oh, man, wow. Look at that, man." It's just Neil's going, "Oh, God." It was just, it was funny. Then cracked up. So, So they were a team, Mal and Neil, getting back to them. They used to go on holiday together and everything. So it was, their families and stuff.
So tell me a little bit more about Neil. I mean, apart from the whole loyalty factor, what was it that the Beatles saw in him?
I should imagine it's his focus on getting the job done and doing the job. He was also an accountant, if I remember rightly. So that's, you're counting the pennies as well. So you've got that. But I think he was just straight and honest with them. There was no messing with Neil. He would just come straight out with it, Hence with me, that's, you can't drive, that's fucking useless. Just boom. No messing, just that's how it is.
Right.
And there's a great story I read somewhere, I think George got busted and somebody was talking to John or Ringo and saying, oh yeah, something's happened. Oh yeah, something's going on. And Neil just took the phone and went, "Hello, Mel. Yeah, George has been busted." "Okay, all right." Do you know what I mean? Just direct, just bring it out, no messing, no flowers, nothing, just done. And that was the thing about Neil. That's why I loved him. I knew where I stood with Neil. You know, I mean, as I said before, he was formidable. His presence was, you know, but he was fun, and he was all right, was Neil. God bless him.
I had heard many years ago that Neil was extremely protective of the Beatles and their legacy. And it was so important. You know, in this day and age, we've had a lot of material that's come out, from the BBC material to the Beatles anthology to the archival box sets. And Neil was the type of person who kind of felt that why touch what's already perfect already? You know, why tamper with something? You can't get a better catalog than this. It was as perfect as you can make it. So, you know, I've always heard that about him. And yet in this day and age, since his passing, there's been, you know, all this other material that's come out in recent years. And I'm wondering how he would feel about that kind of thing.
Well, I guess he most probably wouldn't really sort of agree with it, but he would understand, you know, that's how it is these days. You know, we're a corporation now. We're not some little or some semi little, you know, record company. We're actually now a global corporation, is what Apple is. So I assume he, you know, I mean, he was the one that came out with the first anthology. So, you know, so he pushed all of that.
That's true.
You know, so he was, but it's the legacy. You're right there. You know, it was his job to protect it, even, you know, during the Apple days with, you know, American record companies and stuff and all of that, you know. I'd go into Neil's maybe 3 times a week during Double White album or whatever album that we were working on, you know, and he would ask me how things are going, you know, what's happening, you know. It was just because he didn't know what the boys were doing. Yeah, I mean, he knew that they were in the studio, but he didn't, you know, he wasn't right there. So, yeah. So he was always interested in what they were doing and how they were. And, you know, so there was always conversations to be had with Neil about the boys every day or every night's work, you know.
So he wasn't in communication with them every day?
Oh, I think he was. Not every day, I don't think. Not when he was Apple, not when they were recording. But I'm sure he did speak to them, you know, if not every day, once every 2-3 days, maybe. You know, I'm sure he had to communicate something with them. You know, and if you've got to communicate with one, you really have to kind of speak to the other 3. So there would always be that. You know, he would always be in touch with them, but not in that intimate kind of level that he was when he was working with Mal in the studio. That's a different thing. You know, when you're working 10 till 6 in an office for somebody, it's a lot different than working 6 till 4 o'clock in the morning in the evening with the band. You know, that's a different relationship. Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought up the Beatles anthology, and of course Neil was there to oversee the whole thing, but you know, it's so much a different world since then, and major record companies see the value in all these iconic artists of the past and putting out outtakes and putting out demos, and you know, that was the kind of thing that, you know, even the Beatles themselves, Paul McCartney was hesitant for that kind of stuff to come out.
Yeah, well, you're not in control of it, you see. This is the thing. The thing with Neil is that he wanted to be in control of it. You know, that's, you know, then if you're in control of it, then you guard the legacy. If you're not in control of it, you're not guarding it. You know, it was like with Apple Films. Apple Films was Neil. You know, Neil started it. Neil got my mate Steve in to catalogue every single frame of film that he could get of the Beatles. I mean, everything from all over the world, from auctions. He would buy everything up. He would buy that legacy, you know. Yeah. He would go to auctions, you know, and maybe not bid himself, but he would have somebody bid for him. He bought as much of the Beatles' legacy that wasn't in his control or their control back into the fold. So they had control of it. So that now the corporation has control of it, you know, which I think is Neil's legacy to that. So, you know, he I'm sure he'd sort of think, yeah, he did all right, you know, by them, you know, I think.
Do you think if Neil lived that he would have adapted to all these changes?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think he would have, you know, dismissed it because it's too much. It's happening all around, you know. He would see it, you know. And then
I sometimes question.
It was just, you know, telexes and phone calls.
Yeah.
You know, and cables. You know?
Yeah. Anyway, what memories, if any, can you share about Allen Klein?
Not too many. He came in, he swept in, brought his henchmen. No, it's not true. It brought his acolytes, and yeah, just he was. I mean, to me, he was all right. You know, it was what's the word? It was pleasant enough to me, but I, you know, didn't have anything to do with him. You know, you see, the thing about Kleiny is that he couldn't sack me, and he couldn't sack Mal, and he couldn't sack Neil, although he did try to sack Neil a few times. But he couldn't sack me or Mal because we didn't work for Apple. We worked for the Beatles, you know, in a, like a personal capacity. So, but I do remember when he brought in the signing in. You have to sign in when you turn up. That was kind of like the day I stopped going to Apple on a daily basis. I resented having to sign in, just and watching all of these people just sort of be in fear of Klein. It was horrible. I do know it was a horrible atmosphere. It wasn't nice. You know, the guys around him were all right, you know, and kind of he was all right. But yeah, it was just, yeah.
But you say people at Apple were in fear of him?
Sort of, not, you know, sort of apprehensive, you know, just what's he going to do? Because most people, I think, knew that he was going to start cutting,
yeah, slashing,
you know. And so everybody was like, well, whose department's going to go? You know, who's going to go? You know, so it wasn't, that's when the atmosphere at Apple changed, you know, when he came in. You know, it kind of stopped being a fun place, you know.
As soon as he took over, it was no longer fun.
Oh yeah. The day he first walked in, it was just, okay, I want to see this, I want to see this, I want to know that. Why did that, you know, what is that? What is that? What is this? You know, what is that? You know, why do we have this? You know, why do you have that? You know, why do you want this? It was just like, you know, for fuck's sake.
You know, so he was just looking to cut corners?
Yeah, just, you know, maximize the profit.
It was very much like how the Ruddles portrayed him.
More likely,
decline.
Yeah, I haven't seen that film for years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was not very nice.
I know Peter Asher, as soon as he knew that you know, Allen Klein was going to become their manager and run things, he saw the writing on the wall, and that's when he wanted to leave. So yeah,
shame. But you know, that's what happened. Yeah. Oh God.
All right, so your life after the Beatles. I think you know, many people watching.
Mal yet?
What's that?
You want to speak more about Mal?
Absolutely. Good.
Okay. Let me tell you. Let me tell everybody a story. This sums Mal up for me, really. We'll finish on this one if we want. When Ringo left the band, because he was underappreciated
During the White Album.
During the White Album, I was. Did I tell you this before? Well, anyway. Mal and I were sitting in the reception area at the studios. It must have been about 11ish or so, something like that. And normally the front door is locked, but it was unlocked. And this little guy walked in, drunk. And Mal sort of got up and said, "Can I help you?" And he went, "Yeah, I've heard that Ringo's left the band and I'm volunteering to play the drums for you." And Mal went, "Oh, no, we don't really, well, you need a drummer, don't you?" "No, we don't really need a drummer, you know." And then Mal proceeded to walk this guy, I don't know, 15, 20 feet to the front door. And this man didn't even know that he was walking to this front door. Mal, with the patience of a saint, just started talking to him and looking down at him and offering him a cigarette and light up. And then Mal would take a step and start talking to him, and this guy would look up and he would take a step. And it took about half an hour or so for this guy just to be gently ushered to the door. And Mal went, "No, no." And he locked the door. And I said, "Mal, why didn't you just pick him up and sling him out, you know?" And he said, "Well, whatever I do reflects on the boys. And if I had manhandled this man and just slung him out, he would have gone back to the club and he would have gone, what a bunch of bastards they are." You know, and he said, "But now he's going to go back to the club and go, no, they don't need a drummer. We're a great bunch of people." And he said, Mal said, "You know, whatever we do reflects on the band." And that was a lesson. I wish I'd remembered it, but yeah, that was a lesson that I got taught by Mal. You know, it was just, the band matters. You know, don't do anything that's gonna, you know.
So you didn't carry that over when you were a roadie for the bands that you represented?
Sometimes during a gig, you actually don't have time to be diplomatic. Sometimes just a straightforward way is the only way, I'm afraid. I learned that one quick.
Well, it's certainly understandable why the Beatles loved Mal. I mean, he really had the right attitude overall and knew exactly what to do in his position.
Oh yeah,
and he was right. He was right about that.
Yeah, so. You know, we was in the studio. Mal and I, we were tired. The band were upstairs listening to playback or something one night, and Mal and I were just in the studio, just tidying up, just leaving them to it upstairs. And just there was a click over the monitor, and it was just Mal, cripples. Mal just went bolt upright. You know the picture of the stairs going up in Abbey Road, the studio. Mal just went up them three at a time, straight up there, straight into the control room. And there was a guy at the door that nobody knew that was doing whatever, talking or whatever. And Mal just went straight to him and just went, "Can I have a word with you, please?" And just gently, I learned that one. You know, that one I used a lot with Mal. You know, "Can I just have a word?" And just gently took him out. It was a wonderful sight to see, just how you can manipulate people without them knowing that they're being manipulated. It was an art, and that's what Mal was good at.
So who was that guy? Just someone
just some guy from, just some visitor that had been seeing somebody at Abbey Road. You know, just a stranger. You know, but oh, I can hear the Beatles here. Let's go and, you know.
But how did he get that far to be so close?
Well, because
You
he
know?
was had something most probably upstairs to do with somewhere else in the building.
Hmm.
You know,
Okay.
they weren't always. You know, we didn't always there at sort of 6 o'clock, and there's nobody else in the whole of the building. There was always somebody there at some point
Hmm.
until about 6:30, 7. You know, I mean, this could have been an early evening session. I can't remember, but it was just, it was pretty slick. You know,
Hmm.
good old Mal. Yeah, bless him, bless him.
Anything else you want to share about Mel?
Yeah, yeah. He was just a wonderful companion. It was just fun to be with. It was just, I had so many laughs with him sitting around in the studios, just doing absolutely nothing except, don't hate to say it, but I'll tell you, just getting stoned because there's nothing else to do. You're hanging around, you're hurrying up and waiting.
Hmm.
Mal and I we're going to sit in #1 studio, which is massive, absolutely massive. And it'd just be me and Mal just sitting there in this empty studio, just having a joint, just sitting next to the door. So it was wonderful evenings. Wonderful. I've had tears of joy and laughter coming down my face some nights with sitting with Mal and him telling me stories about the road. And, we're in the reception one day and the Hollies were recording in Studio 3, I think it was. And the singer came out and saw Mal, and Mal just went, "Oh shit, he's going to want to arm wrestle." And it's Allen Clark. He's going, "Oh, Mal, come on, man, give me an arm wrestle, man. Come on, Mal." It's just like, "You all right, Alan?" "Yeah, thanks, Mal. Yeah, okay." And it was just, just sitting in the lobby, just listening to all these stories, from roadies, because it's the roadies that would sit out there most of the time, and it's just, and I'd just be in awe, I'd just sort of sitting there, just listening to these seasoned pros talking about the road, and it was, it was definitely what I needed, definitely what I wanted.
Did you ever get to observe any sessions from other major artists at Abbey Road?
At Abbey Road, I worked for Steve Harley. You familiar with Steve?
Yes, I've heard of him.
Okay. Loves the Prima Donna album. I was looking after Steve there. And funnily enough, that's the last time I saw Paul and Linda. So that would have been, 76, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They came into Studio 3 and just say hello. And at EMI, that's the only time I've actually been in that studio. At the Abbey Road, of course. But there's Wishbone Ash. Let's see, Annie Lennox, Dave Stewart, who was like with the Tourists, did them. Laurel Creme and Kevin Godley.
Sure.
I did the concert. I looked after them doing the Consequences album at the Manor studio with Pete Cook. Me and him didn't get on. Me and Peter Cook didn't quite get on, which is weird. But anyway, so yeah.
So let's now really go into your life as a roadie. Okay. And you sent me a list here of the artists that you worked for. Yeah. Just want to run them down. I think our listeners will be quite impressed here.
Okay, I'll keep quiet.
Well, you've got Derek and the Dominos. You were a roadie and baggage man. The Rolling Stones, Sympathy for the Devil tour as a roadie. You worked at the concert for Bangladesh. Got to tell me a little bit about that. Wishbone Ash, tour manager. For that, Mahavishnu Orchestra, Ike and Tina Turner Review, Soft Machine, Caravan, the Climax Blues Band. Just mentioned Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel. Ted Nugent, tour manager for Ted Nugent for 2 tours. You just mentioned Godley and Cream, Mahogany Rush, Cheap Trick, Mother's Finest, Larry Coryell. Blazer supporting AC/DC. You've got various stage management gigs, European festivals, Climax Blues Band again, Madness. You were the tour manager, the promoter's tour manager, I'm sorry. Also, the Tourists, Judas Priest, Tommy Cooper, Tina Turner, Roofing Harris. I don't know who Roofing Harris is.
Rolf,
Oh, then you typed it wrong.
did I?
Yes.
I'll have to go back and have a look at that one.
Okay.
Rufin Harris, Rolf Harris, it should be.
Wellington Beatles. What exactly is Wellington Beatles?
I think it was Wellington Beatles. They were a tribute band for the Beatles, which is weird.
And they were out of where?
I think they were from Leighton Buzzard down in England.
Okay.
This was in a Middle Eastern tour. Well, we'll get onto the Middle East.
Okay. Gloria Gaynor, Matt Monroe, and the Sid Lawrence Orchestra. Petula Clark. She just turned 89. Rod Hull and Emu. Leo Sayer, Hot Chocolate. Dave D, Dozy, Mick, and Tick.
Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, and Tick. Have I written that wrong as well?
Yeah, I think so. And the Tremolos. Chaz and Dave, Georgie Fame, Ralph McTell, Motorhead, Kid Creole and the Coconuts. And that's it.
That's it.
Well, you covered every conceivable genre of music, I think, here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, every bit. Yeah.
So through Mal, this was you really became interested in this life. Did he encourage you to do this kind of work?
No, I wanted to go on the road for. When I started at NEMS, the guys that I worked with was a semi-pro drummer. He was an office boy as well, with a band called Rupert's People. Way back, and I did a few gigs with them, just helping them out on a Saturday and a Friday night, because they only did 2 sort of gigs a week because they were semi-pro. They were working during the day, and I kind of enjoyed that. And then Steve left to actually go on the road with Rupert's People. And I was kind of jealous of that one. I wanted to go on the road. It just looked exciting. So that I'd always, but then with Johnny Fanning at Sounds Incorporated's road manager, right? He did a lot of stuff with Mal, because I think they toured a lot with the Beatles.
Yes.
And I met Johnny at the Saville. And so he was another roadie that impressed me. But you see, there's 2 other guys that impressed me as well, was Cream's roadies. They came into NEMS just like Mal and Neil did. Right? And they was like, whoa, yeah, there was a presence. And then the Cream's roadies turned up to do the same thing, to see the accountants. This was when Stigwood joined up with NEMS. And these guys were like cowboys, turquoise, bangles, and, the cowboy hat and the cowboy boots and the jeans and the, jippy sort of, just like, wow, yeah, these look really cool. Like Mal and Neil were in, like ties and jackets and trousers. These guys were just like cowboys, and that was impressive. And so I kind of got to see roadies, but with Johnny Fanning, in between the shows at the Saville, there'd be 2 shows on a Sunday, and then after the first show, we'd go to the pub. And Johnny Fanning, wonderful man, little tubby guy. We're in a pub, right? And it's heaving. It's just packed because it's the theatre crowd and everything else. And it's a Sunday night, and it's Johnny's shout for a drink, right? And he just says, I'll get him. So he's going to be ages. Nah, you watch this. And he's only a little man. He stood up and he went, excuse me, please. Coming through, coming through, and everybody just went like that. And he went to the bar, got these 4 pints, turned around and went, excuse me, please, coming through, mind your backs. And like all these geezers' asses are like sort of moving out of the way, do you know what I mean? And he just walked straight to it, put them pints down, and went, there you go. That's how you do it. That's a lesson that I still use now. That's just be loud and pleasant, and you'll just get through any crowd. Wonderful. So and Johnny actually wanted to take me on the road, because I was kind of, I was helping the crews sort of load up at the Saville at night, and helping them carry their gear, because that's what I was. I was just there to do whatever I could do, and so that kind of got my juices going. Because I was seeing bands coming in and they were going out to gigs, and it was kind of like, there's that and there's the office. There's that and there's the office, I like that. That seems my cup of tea, And so I'd always kind of graduated to that anyway, and then sort of course at EMI, I'm listening to Mal and, with all these other roadies, and just like in awe, and I'm just going, I want some of this, I want to go on the road. I've got to go on the road. I have to go on the road. And then of course, the band split up, and there's just George, and he brings in he brings in Eric and Bobby Whitlock and Carl Radel and Jim Gordon, and their tour manager Bruce McCaskill, another Liverpudlian. He used to be the singer with the Swinging Blue Jeans, I think it was. Right, okay. Went on to the management side. So and things weren't quite sort of okay with Mal and myself at that time. It was, there's 2 of us looking after one man, and it's just, things weren't working out really. And I was just saying to Bruce, God, I just want to go on the road, man. So I just want to. He says, well, we're going on the road. Why don't you come with us? And I just went, yeah, because I never went anywhere. You see, Mal being the senior in our setup, if any of the boys went away, Mal went with them. Ringo going to Nashville to do Beaucoup de Blues, Mal went with him,
Right.
Whereas, okay, so I'm left, twiddling my thumbs. But also, you see, through Wishbone, through Rupert's people, the manager was Miles Copeland, right? And he got this little band together, 4 guys, and they formed this band, and they called themselves Wishbone Ash. So when I wasn't doing anything with the boys, I was down with them at their rehearsal room. So I would transfer whatever little skills I had with the Beatles, that kind of just went over to Wishbone. So I'd just be looking after them kind of ad hoc, and then it
must look impressive to have on your resume, the Beatles. Shouldn't that make it a lot easier for you to get any job as a roadie?
No, it didn't make any difference. Didn't make any difference. You see, because the only difference it made was that I joined Derek and the Dominos. Right. Apart from that, no, because I'd started to know Wishbone Ash away from the Beatles anyway, through sort of, Rupert's people and Miles Copeland.
Right.
So, but no, working for the Beatles didn't really help at all. And I never really spoke about it too much when I was on the road anyway. It was, as far as I was concerned, I was a roadie for Derek and the Dominos. And then when that eventually finished after 9 months, I I've met Stu and the Stones a couple of times, or once really, I suppose. When Mal one night we went to Olympic Studios where the Stones were playing, recording. Mal just went to see his mate Stu, who was their tour manager. And then at the end of Derek and the Dominos, Stuart got in touch with me and said, you know, we're going on tour, we need a road manager. And after Derek and the Dominos, it was, yeah, okay, you know, I can do that. But I'll be perfectly honest with you here, Ken. The Stones for me was an absolute disaster.
Why is that?
Everybody who's listening, I was a disgrace. It was the worst time of my life. I was an alcoholic drunk.
Oh.
I don't remember much about that tour at all. Hold my hands up. You know, and that's my biggest blot.
Did you start to have an alcohol problem then, or did you have it even during the Beatles?
No,
times?
I think it started really with Derek and the Dominos. Derek and the Dominos were mad. Absolutely mad. You see, let me tell you, the first time I was at Eric's in Hurtwood Edge, and that's where the band were rehearsing. And the first gig, right? Excuse me, Bruce has got this van, and he's got two other roadies. One called one called Baz Ward, who was keyboard roadie with the Nice, right? And he was brought in because Bobby Whitlock keyboard, right? And then he brought this other guy in called Peppy, who was a little Scottish man, right? You know, really, just like a gypsy, you know, with a tie around and just, you know, it was absolutely mad. I tell you what, I'll never forget this. My first ever day on the road, got in the van, right? Sitting there, and there's Baz there, and there's Peppy there, and I'm in the middle, and Peppy pulls out his cigarette papers and does a 3 Skinner, which is a joint, you know, one of the English joints.
Okay.
Right, I'm used to a 1 Skinner, you see, just, you know, clean up the grass, and our Mal showed me clean up the grass and get rid of the seeds and,
okay,
you know, make it all. It's a little one. Well, the English one is just like a big hash thing, right? So we sit down, and I'd smoke pot, so it was all right, and I sat down. Finished that after about 20 minutes. It's like, yeah, this is good. Christ, he lit up another one, right? And it was like, oh God, okay. Oh, about an hour. It was like, yeah. And then he lit up another one. And it was like, that was my first day of on the road. I don't remember the journey, but it was very pleasant. But what I loved about that was that we were doing clubs, like real small, little sweaty clubs, you know, and yet we were doing theatres, you know, in big towns, and we were doing, you know, little clubs in these little seaside towns and stuff. It was an amazing tour, I threw Robert Plant off the stage at Birmingham.
Why?
Because I didn't know who he was, and it goes like this. The band come on, I'm on one side of the stage, Baz is on the other, along with Peppy, and there's a guy standing at the back, scruffy looking merchant, right? Baz comes up, he says, "Who's that?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "We'll get him off." Okay, so I just said to him, "Sorry, you're gonna have to leave the stage," and he left. Peppy comes fucking running up. "Kevin, man, Kevin, do you know who that was?" I went, "No." He says, "Oh God, that was Robert Plant." No. So yeah, so you know, things happen on the road.
I'm sure he was all right with it.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I think I did get the word that Eric was really pissed off. But apart from that, but yeah, it was an amazing tour. But then we get to America, right? Now, Bruce says, I've got a plan here. Baz came along, Peppy stayed in England. They got an American guy called Clark. What Bruce's idea was that we'd have an advance man, which was Bruce, this tall, goatee little
Uh-huh.
guy that would go in 12 hours before us, 24 hours before us, and just make sure that the promoter knows what's happening. So Bruce didn't have to worry about that, right? But what he wanted was, he wanted me to travel with him and the band so I could take care of the bags and take care of the band, because he knew, see, I knew the band, so it was easy.
Right.
So that was easy. So that's what I did. I would, get to the hotel after a flight or whatever at about 4, as soon as I'd got everybody settled into their rooms, then I would just go down to the gig and then set up my drum kit or Jim's drum kit and carry on with doing what else had to be done. And then at the end of the show, we'd pack away everything else, and then the road crew would go somewhere else, and then I would go back to the hotel. So I was partying with the band all the time, constantly, and they were just full of drugs. It was just unbelievable, unbelievable. I tell you what, one morning, so many fucking stories. One morning, the first time I ever had to thumb a lift in America.
Yeah.
It was, we're all just piling, we've got station wagons, right? The normal sort of, so we'll get all the bags in the station wagon. I think it might have been, Carl went, oh, what about my car? He had hired a car for some unknown reason to do whatever, right? So I was designated to drive it, follow them to the airport. Right? So I go, okay, I'll get in the car, and we go just past the toll booth, and the car breaks down, no petrol. That's why he didn't want to drive it, right? So I can see the airport just over there. I can see planes landing.
Right.
I'm not far away, so dumb idiot me thinks I'll walk. Not that far, right? I got a Granny Takes a Trip jacket on, brown and green. Right? I've got my cowboy boots and my stupid shirt and, this fuzzy fucking hair that used to be out there like that. And I started walking, and I ended up in this really, really bad neighborhood. Really, really bad neighborhood, man. Oh God, really bad. I mean, yeah. And that was just like, okay, never ever doing that again. I was bricking it. It was just, I was getting some really bad looks. Eventually found a taxi. It was just like, oh God. What I should have done is just stood in front of the car doing that. Right?
Right.
I didn't
Would have
know
made
that.
more sense.
Yeah. But yeah, for you, but not for an Englishman, But yeah, it was mad. Bobby, that's another one. This is my sort of where's Bobby moment. We get in the cars one morning, right, the 2 station wagons, load up. Bruce goes, right, let's go. And he says, where's Bobby? I don't know. Where's Bobby? I don't know. Oh, Christ. Bobby was still in bed. How he was left in bed, I don't know, right? So there's only one flight, and we have to catch this.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a 9-hour drive, I think it was. I'm going to miss the flight. So he goes off. I go and wake Bobby up and say, hey, man, we've got to drive. Right? And so, okay, man, yeah. Okay. Well, we get in the car. First thing he does, pulls out a bag of weed like that. And he goes, gonna smoke all this before we get there. And we did. And I just, 8 hours later, just floated into this venue, just like, wow, God, what happened there? It was just, there's stories of drugs, and it can just, it goes on and on. There's loads, so let's move on.
That the last time that I interviewed you, after the interview, and I was curious to know about your life as a roadie, I was just asking you, was it very Spinal Tapish? And you said it was completely Spinal Tapish. And it just seems like you can make a movie out of your life here. Even, after the Beatles, as fascinating as it is to work for the Beatles and Brian and everybody, in their company. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. Why don't we mention a few more
Okay,
highlights?
yeah.
We can't get
Wait
to
for the drug
everyone
to get-
that you mentioned. Let me bring up a few people here. What was it like to work with Ike and Tina Turner?
That was good. That was on that tour with the Ike and Tina Turner, Mahavishnu, Wishbone, Soft Machine, Climax, and whoever it was. That was a festival tour.
Okay.
That was that's the tour that Mars Copeland first went bankrupt. That bankrupted him because it was a festival tour, never been done before, called Star Trucking.
Okay.
I Google it. I think there's something on Google about Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was a stage manager on that. Because I'd left Wishbone Ash by then. Got busted in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Another drug story. Yeah, that was all right. That was all right. But because I was a stage manager, they were just doing their thing, on stage, off stage, and just next one on, next one on. I was just a stage manager. That was an amazing, absolutely amazing tour. That really was. That was phenomenal. It really was. We played did this gig in Orange, down in the south of France. It was an amphitheatre.
Mm-hmm.
See, the Beatles should have done an amphitheatre because this was just brilliant. And because lots of festivals go late, this is just the way it is. And this particular French one, you can guarantee that any French festival is going to be late. It's just the way they are, besides a few other things sort of not very pleasant happening. Wishbone went on at about 5:30 in the morning. Pitch black. Just the lights and the backdrop, which is, this Roman columns and stuff.
Okay.
As the sun starts to rise, as the dawn starts to come, you look up and all you can see is just a very faint glow with these structures somewhere up there in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And as it gets lighter and lighter, and the band are rocking away and it's getting lighter, these suddenly appear just mammoth statues. And it's just getting lighter, and it's just the band are playing like mad, and the audience are going like crazy. And it was just a magical night and morning. It was one of the highlights of being on the road, I think, was that just being in this amphitheatre was just, whoa, yeah, really, really something else.
Yeah, it's not something you can plan for it to be visually that stunning,
No, never. And I tell you, talking about that, Wishbone did a gig at Reading Festival at one point, and it was just as the sun was going down. And it's just a great photo of Andy Powell with this red queue around him, where it's just like, just the sun, it's just a phenomenal photo that I've seen. It's just one of them, I look at it and I go, know exactly where that was, just that moment in time. It's just, and yeah, but with Orange, it was just like that moment in time. It was just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Getting there was a bitch, but that was, well, by then, you see, what had happened is we started Star Trekking up in Scandinavia, and I fell down the stairs and nearly broke my leg. So I was basically on like a crutch. So I was a crutch stage manager, and with whatever the gig was, we had these two little planes that were going to take us and the equipment down to the south of France.
Uh-huh.
And it was like we finished so early in the morning, and everybody was by then I think we'd been on the road for about a week and a half, and it was just, you know, festival. It's just like, it's killing. And we loaded up the plane and I was sitting there with Cragsy. It's Cragsy. I got it. Yeah, Cragsy is a roadie. Name is Geordie, Newcastle. Cragsy and Granny. Anyway, the pilot turns up. Right, we've loaded up these planes. Right, the pilot turns up and says, "Can't fly that one. It's too heavy." You know, the nose was like that. You know, and so it's like,
God. Yeah.
So some gear had to be taken off one and off of another, and by then my throat had gone because I'd just been shouting and stage managing just stupidity all over the place, you know. And Mal Cragsy went and sorted this out all by himself, and I tell you, that was man, good roadie. I tell you about some roadies, excellent roadie, you know. There's some good boys out there. You know, the thing is, you see, what people I wish would really understand is, without crews, you wouldn't have a show. You know, you really wouldn't. Without the Mals and the Neils,
right,
Cragsies, and even me, and, you know, Jack the At, Eagle, Obsy Cobsy, you know, CJ, Obbit, you know, there wouldn't be shows at all at any of these places. You know,
most fans aren't aware of all the work that gets
no,
put
they're
into,
not, and they
into.
really should be. They should give a shout out sometimes, because, you know, and we used to work hard. But anyway, yeah. So that was Star Trucking. So that was pretty good.
I'm going to have you talk about the concert for Bangladesh, since it's one of the shows that you listed here. So
yeah, Mal got in touch. And just say, look, you know, George is doing a charity gig in New York and needs somebody to do the back line. Do you want to come and do it? And it was just, yeah, let's just go and do it, you know. So I went back to Apple, and in those days we used to be able to fly equipment around the world, excess baggage, right? You know,
okay.
I mean, that was like the first flight I ever did was with Derek and the Dominos, and it was all of their equipment down to the south of France for a warm-up festival show, and all the gear just went excess baggage. Drum kit, you know, some amps, you know, the guitars.
That's what it was called?
Excess baggage. Yeah.
That's how it's labeled?
Okay. That's how it used to be. They don't do it anymore, but that's how it was. You know, you just turn up with a truckload of gear and go, excess baggage, you know.
Okay.
For the money. But yeah, anyway, that you know, even that Derek and the Dominoes South of France thing is another story. We'll have to have a drink sometime, Ken, and just sit down for 10 hours, and I'll
okay.
But anyway.
Hey, when I come over to England, I'm going to make sure I visit you.
Yeah, you better do. Anyway, Derek and the Dom, concert for Bangladesh. Yeah, so I'm taking Ringo's drum kit over to New York for the concert for Bangladesh, excess baggage, and I'm put in a hotel in the park, Central Park, just up Central Park. And with Derek and the Dominos, you see, things always go back to. With Derek and the Dominos, there was a couple of American girls that we met in London, and one of them decided, because I had a rip just near my crotch, decided to patch it up with a American flag. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of it. It was just, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm showing the flag, you know, just happened to be tied to my crotch. Wasn't me, it was these Americans. But anyway, one day I get a call, go down to the reception. So I go down there and the guy goes, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to ask you to leave. Now I've got Ringo's kit in my wardrobe. My immediate thought was, oh God, I'm going to be sitting out on the street with Ringo's kit, you know, just sitting there on the street with Ringo's kit. I thought, well, this is madness. So I apologized profusely, as one only can.
Yeah.
The hotel manager that you've tried not to upset too much. And yeah, I just said, look, you know, I'm sorry. I explained that the American girls had given it to me. I'll cover it up. So I just got some gaffer and I just covered it up. And funnily enough, watching the film of Bangladesh, I can see this gaffer sitting just on a crutch. It's like, just, but yeah, so Mal, yeah, so we did concert for Bangladesh, and it was a few days rehearsals in a little studio. I think it might have been in the basement, actually, in Madison Square Garden. Not too sure, really. But yeah, that was a good gig. It's where I met Chipmunk. It was a lovely man. You know,
Who's that? Who was that?
Chipmunk. He did Woodstock.
Oh, okay.
Right. So I mean, you know, yeah, it's.
I should know then. Yeah.
You know, we're going back.
Yes.
You know, even going back. Yeah, it was in between shows. It was funny. Nothing to do as normal in between shows. You know, so like Chip says, "Hey, do you want to come with me?" So he does a big line, right? Now, so we both do a big line. Now, you know, Madison Square Garden's like that. Well, underneath the bleachers, there's just corridors that go all the way around like that. I just said to Chip, "I'm going for a walk." He said, "I'm going for a walk too." He went one way, I went the other way. And we met. Funny enough, we were going at the same pace, right at the other end about 20 minutes later. And it's just like, "Hey man, how you doing?" "Yeah, good." And then just came back, and it was just like, "Oh wow, this is all right. That was fun. That was, yeah, good old Chip."
This is while the concert was on, or what?
No, this is during the interval.
Okay.
Oh no, oh no. While the concert was on, that was, you know, full bore sort of, okay, what's got to be done, you know, all of that. But it was a nice interlude. It really was. It was just all this sort of, not chaos really, but, you know, activity that goes on at Backstage during a big concert like that. It was, you know, just chill out. And yeah, that was good. So the concert was really good. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
classic.
you know, it was good for me. It was good to meet, you know, Billy again, and Carl Radel again, and not Carl, Klaus Vormann again, and, you know, all of those others. You know, it was just nice. It was a pleasant experience, really. I must admit, it was. Yeah, I was pleased with that one. Yeah, it went well. It really did go well.
Yeah, well, when you've got that level of talent on stage, you're bound to have a great show, even though it was put together rather quickly. So
yeah, with Eric though, what was weird with Eric is that we was instructed just to leave him alone and not disturb him at all. So even though I'd sort of toured with him, it was kind of like, well, that's the instructions, just leave him alone. So I just left him alone, you know, just, okay. I won't, you know, I'll say hello at some other point, you know.
you know why you were told
Well,
that?
yeah, because he was in the state that he was in, really.
Yeah, he had a bad heroin problem then.
Yeah, which I saw firsthand when I was working with him at Hertford Edge. So, you know, he wanted on tour with Eric and the Dominos a Scale Extrix kit, right? And so he carried around a Scale Extrix kit. And then one night, he says, Bruce said to me, "Kevin, okay, we're not carrying this around anymore. Want to put it in the van?" Right? And I think we were playing in Philly. So we got to the hotel, you know, and then Bruce says, "This has got to go back in the van." So I've now got to go down to the gig carrying this big Scalextrics box. I had a briefcase, which Mal gave me when I left, which is like an old doctor's briefcase, sort of like that shape. You know? Yeah. And Jim Gordon said to me just before I was leaving, he said, "Here, Kevin, you can have this." And he gave me a little bag of pop. Right. So I get a taxi to this gig, and it's a dark area. And it's like, you know, the backstage sort of entrance. It's like an old theatre. So it's like an alleyway, dark alleyway. And, you know, and I'm looking for the looking for the stage door. Couldn't find it, but I'm walking down this dark alleyway. And I look up and I see a uniform up on the gantry. And I got this box here and I'm stoned out my head and I've got my briefcase and these lights come up behind me and car stops and I turn around and it's a police car.
Oh boy.
Yeah, what are you doing, buddy? Oh, I'm trying to find my way in. Oh, with the band and I'm trying to go. Where you got in the band? I said, just all for papers and things. He says, let me have a look. So I got, rather than put the scale electrics on the floor, damp old floor, I put it on the bonnet of the car. Oh, you know, and he opened up my briefcase. And the first thing I saw was my little bag of pot sitting right on top of all my stuff. And it was like, oh, fuck. And my throat went dry, my chest went dry, my lungs went dry. And his hand did this, went all the way along, looking through all the sort of paperwork, past the pot, and then he started going back, and he came back, and the pot had gone. And he just leant over and just said, get your fucking ass out of here, buddy. I went, yes, sir. And just fucking picked it up and just went around to the front entrance. Jesus. Excuse me, that was just like, wow. That was scary. That really was scary for a young lad. But that was, you know, just one of those many, many, many moments in my life.
We got to make a movie out of your life.
Huh?
We got to make a movie out of your life.
Yeah. So
Why don't we
talking about down at Domino? Yeah, sorry, Bangladesh. Yeah, so that was, yeah, it was good for me. I really did enjoy it. I was really pleased. It did go well, you know.
Yeah, well, what can you say about it? It's such a classic concert, so historic. Any memories of working with George at that time, or just for that show?
No, it was no, because yet again, it's just a band. You're just working with a band, and you know George was in charge, and you know you take your instructions from George, but you know we need this, we need that, and you know and you just do it. It's, you know. I was also working with Badfinger's roadie, Nicky Bell, I think his name was. He was also helping out there, so give Nicky a shout as well. So
yeah, so many amazing people on that stage. It's
yeah.
Sometimes I marvel that they fit so many people on that stage all at once.
Yeah.
Which whenever I watch that concert, that's what I'm thinking about. I wish it had been shot a little bit better because sometimes it looks a little dark, you know, when you see it. But yeah, what an array of talent.
Yeah, I mean, what a couple of shows. It was, amazing. Yeah, I had an amazing time. I must admit, there's a few other stories. I had an amazing time.
Yeah. Why don't we just pick a few more, because we can't get to all of them. But I certainly want to know about Petula Clark, since she's a favorite of mine.
She was lovely. She was lovely. It was what I did. It was when I left Wishbone, I basically became a journeyman. I didn't have a band that I now worked with. I had to go and find work wherever I could. I was freelance. That was it. No work, no pay. You know, there's no sort of, oh, we're not touring for a while. You know, you'll get your per diems, or you'll get your retainer. There was none of that. So it was work. And I got this job in the Middle East as a tour manager for the promoter over there. And what it was in those days, back in the early 80s, which is 82 to 84, it was nothing like it is now. You see pictures now and it's just, it's like a modern day city. There, it wasn't. The tallest buildings were the brand new hotels, like the Hyatt, You know, in Abu Dhabi, you had the Ramada in Bahrain, we had the Hilton, which we did a lot of, but also a Ramada. So each tour would only last about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks maybe. And we do like 3 shows in each hotel or each venue.
Okay.
So I never really kind of got to see any of the artists, or not, sort of almost like get intimate with them. Yeah, sure, you know, had a drink occasionally, you know, where everybody was, you know, an ensemble would be having a drink in a bar or something. But mainly the artists, they kind of tended to sort of stay in their rooms, just because once you come out, then you're surrounded by fans, I suppose. You know, there is no kind of relaxing. It was the same with Tina, you know, and I did 2 tours with Tina, 82 and 83. And, you know, I never really saw her during the day because she was just holed up in a room, just like Fatula was, you know. But we had 1 or 2 drinks with the bands at night, and she was lovely. She was, yeah, you know, she was a pleasure to work with, you know, just one of those good old pros, just, you know, on time, you know, do the show, do the best that you possibly can, you know, and get off, you know.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and it was the same with Matt Monroe. You know, he's a lovely man. But I've met, you know, with Matt, we had something to talk to just because of NEMS and Vic Lewis, who was his manager, and I knew Vic Lewis through NEMS and stuff. So we kind of have a conversation there, you know. But yeah, it was 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, gone. Next one in, you know. 2.5 weeks gone, next one in. So it's just constant touring. I don't really call it, you know, it was actually boring, to be honest with you.
No.
Well, with touring, at least you know, you're moving about during the day, you know. Here I got 3 gigs in one venue. You know, so what do? You know, you get up in the morning, what is there to do? Nothing. You know, wait for the show, do the show, and then have a few drinks, go to bed. Then what do? Nothing, you know. I'm not a sitting around a swimming pool type of guy, you see. The musicians are, you know, which is fair enough. But I never have been, you know. I've done it occasionally, but no, I like to keep moving. I like touring. I like just keep on the go constantly. And also I was wearing a suit and tie. You know, so, and I kind of did that for 2 years, you know. Had to wear a suit and tie, which, you know, horrible.
Life on the road is not all that easy, not always all that exciting, but you know, I certainly would have wanted to have spent more time if I was in your shoes with the stars themselves. Well, certainly if it's someone that you greatly admire, you know, Petula Clark, who is, I'm just saying, Petula Clark just turned 89 and she's still working.
Yeah, there you go.
She's still out there. I mean, it tells you how much it means to her to keep active, and you know, so impressed with her.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it, you know, I don't ever remember anyone saying, I really hate this. You know, it was what they did. It was their job, you know, that it's what they lived for. They were musicians, singers, you know, backing musicians. That's what they lived for. That was their job, you know. This is why I admire musicians, you see. When I first met Wishbone, they were living in what I can only describe as a squat, a hollow, just a horrible, dank, horrible place. And I was working for the biggest band in the world. And yet my best friends were living in hovels. And I wanted to be with my best friends, you know, which is, you know, bizarre, you know, but that's what I wanted. I wanted to be with Wishbone, not really with the Beatles. Because Wishbone were out there gigging, they were out there doing it. The Beatles had already done it and passed me by, you know. So,
right.
You know, and that's why I really admire musicians, you know, more than anything, is because of what they go through, or what they're prepared to go through to do what they believe in, which is play music. You know, there's some that just want to be famous and be knobheads, but there's others that are just true musicians that just want to play. Sure, you get the trappings, but it's I want to be a musician. I want to play a musical instrument. How good I become is how hard I practice. You know, and so when you're watching them practice in this hovel, it's kind of like, it's awe-inspiring, I must admit. You know, well, for me it was, you know, but I knew that the Beatles had done the same thing, you know, at you know, in Hamburg and stuff. So I could see parallels with Owen and the Beatles. You know, that's what drew me to them, I think. You know,
it's even more impressive when some of these stars are advanced in years and they still choose to go out on the road, especially if they are financially independent and they don't need to. They're doing it just for the love of it, because this is what's part of their DNA. You know, I mean, I've heard it said so many times between Ringo and Paul, you know, they don't have to be out on the road. They're doing it because they love it. This is what they always wanted to do, to make a living this way, to make music, record music, and be out on the road. So the people that keep on doing it, you know, Ringo is now in his 80s. You know, Paul is going to be 80 next year. And I'm just saying, people in that age bracket, and thankfully we still have some people from that time period that are still with us, that still want to go out and tour.
Yeah, that's why they'll always have my respect, you see.
Yeah.
Always. I've only met one or two musicians that I didn't really care too much for. But most 99.9% of the musicians I've met are just dedicated to being musicians. You know? Now, whether they were dicks in another life, you know, is a different matter. But, you know, it's still what they've done to achieve what they've got. You know, you have to respect that, you know, because it's a lot of hard work. It really is.
I know. One of the artists you mentioned here was Hot Chocolate. And it's kind of interesting because they got their start at Apple. They were the Hot Chocolate Band.
I've forgotten all about that.
Yeah. They released a single of Give Peace a Chance, which was a reggae version of the song. And then they went on to be somewhat famous, especially in the 70s, with Everyone's a Winner and You Sexy Thing.
Yeah.
And so when you were a roadie with them, were you aware of their beginnings with Apple at that time?
No, didn't enter it, Ken, didn't enter it, you know. Yet again, I was just a freelance tour manager. You see, this is a problem with being a freelancer. You know, you're not in the group. You know, this is why I always hated being a freelancer, because you're not in the group. You're apart from the group.
You're like an extra.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's not nice. It's much better to be a tour manager for a band rather than just being a tour manager with a band. You know, it's a hell of a lot easier. And I was just a tour manager, you know, with, you know, just with a band, you know, and it was just Hot Chocolate. I mean, the girls came out of these hospitals in the Middle East. It was just like, you know, blimey, all these nurses just turned up. It was like, talk about you sexy thing. God, you know, I'd never seen so many women at gigs over there, you know, and it was all just because of Hot Chocolate and Errol, you know, just, yeah, it was phenomenal. They were good. But you see, this is the other thing. You see, the first year I was doing it, what I had was, we had a small PA with no lights. And had a Arabic guy from Bahrain doing the PA, so it was like a little local PA sort of thing. And so it was really low budget the first year I was there. So we only had little bands, and Brian, the promoter, wanted to bring bigger acts over. So he bought his own PA and his own lighting system, shipped that out to the Middle East. Yeah. And so my second tour, I just had to deal with all of these lights, all of this PA, crews that knew nothing about the Middle East, absolutely nothing, and just expected it to be like England. And it was nothing like England. You know, this is like a mega cabaret circuit. Do you know what I mean? With this, and you don't have the humpers because you have coolies, and you say to them, that's got to go over there. So they push it over there, then they bugger off, and then they disappear. And then when you start off with 12 guys, and half an hour later you haven't got any, because that mentality wasn't there. So I'm doing all of this other work. It was horrendous. I'm glad I left that. It was horrendous. But with that one, we did like Leo Sayer. I mean, the first tour that Tina did was with Majid and this little PA. Those gigs were rocking. Well, the second time she came over, and we had this bigger PA and the lights and everything else, and the show was better. Yeah, there's people dancing on the tables, and it was just like mad. It was full blown rock and roll, but in a ballroom, with tables and chairs and women dancing on the tables, and well, it was incredible every night. She was rocking. She really was. She was great. Yeah, she was all right. Her and the girls.
So, of all the people that you worked with after your time with the Beatles, as a roadie or as a stage manager, if you could single out a few that were the most enjoyable, who'd you pick?
A guy called Tommy Cooper. Who you don't know, do you?
No, I don't. I've heard the name.
Okay.
I should know. I feel I should know.
All right. Well, he was an old-time comedian, magician, should I say. Excuse me. Sorry, Tommy. An old-time magician that used to mess his tricks up. Right? You're trying, but just do me a favor. Just try and see him on YouTube.
Okay.
Right? I grew up with him. It might not be your cup of tea, as we say in England, dear boy, but it's like he was just one of the best magicians you'll ever see. But he got it always wrong. But you've got to be really good to do what he did, right?
So everything he did was intentional.
Oh, absolutely, 100%, without a doubt. You'll see the man. He wears a red sort of hat. I grew up with him, watching him on the telly and stuff, and he was my idol. And I mean, I just love the man, absolutely love the man. And I was so fortunate to be able to tour with him in the Middle East. It was only 2.5 weeks, and he was really old, and sadly he had like ulcers on his legs, and he couldn't walk very well, and everything else. And he was, to me, it was a pleasure. Now, you see, I could tell you some stories, but it wouldn't be funny unless you knew the man, right? Because, the gate. But anyway, he to me was second to the Beatles,
Wow, that's high praise. Was it strictly a British following that he had, or was he known in other places?
I think he did like Australia, but he never really made it in America, which when you watch him, you'll most probably understand. But he was an institution. When I toured with him, that was great. But sadly, the year after, when I was in the Middle East in '84, we got the news that he died, and he died on stage at the London Palladium. And because of who Tommy was, when he fell down, half the audience laughed because that's what they thought the joke was. right? But it wasn't. It was no. He died. So that to me is my Beatles and Tommy Cooper. And then the next one I have to say is Lemmy. I love that man. Love that man to death. He was a pain in the ass sometimes, but I loved him to death. He was the most professional, musician that you could want to meet. Personality-wise, that's something else.
Yeah.
But I loved him. We had so much in common. It was a real pleasure. It was hard, really hard. In fact, now that was more Spinal Tap than anything else. And funny enough, it was always it was like with that one, it was the drummer was the main problem. I tell you what, the first gig I did with Motorhead was at the Isle of Man TT races, right? So it's just biker weekend, right? Just full of bikers. That's all it is. That's all you see. And they race around the island, 22 miles, going mad. You can see that on YouTube as well. Just like, Jesus, lots of people have been killed. But anyway, this is my first gig with Motorhead, the beginning of 9 months. Do the gig in the ballroom, absolutely fine, no problems, bit of partying on afterwards, no problems at all. Get up the next day, nice day, got to catch a flight back to England, right? Because the Isle of Man, little place. And go downstairs and I see Lemmy sitting in the bar with a glass of beer, and I get a cup of tea, sitting there with him, just chatting. He's reading the paper, and I'm just going to check us out. Okay. Go over to the reception, and the man's there in his morning suit, one of the hotels, with the tiles and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I've come to check out Motorhead. And he said, okay, yeah. He said, about the fire in Mr. Kilmister's room. I've just been with Mr. Kilmister. He said nothing. Okay. Could you show me? Yes, certainly, sir. Come with me to housekeeping. So I follow this man through the dungeons and stuff. When we get to housekeeping, and he says to the housekeeping lady, yeah, room so-and-so, could you just show him the burn mark? And she picks up like an over blanket, and there's a fucking hole like that. Right? Singed all the way around, soaking wet, singed all the way around. Well, okay. And then she picks up another one, and it's slightly smaller, big hole like that, singed all the way around. Brings up another one, a smaller one, it's fucking hole like this, all the way around, singed. I went, okay, no problems. We'll sort that out at the bill. As we're walking back to reception, he said, tell me, who's the man that wears white trousers, no, white shoes, black jeans, and a leather jacket? I said, I'm thinking, they all do.
Yeah.
I said, they all do. Why? He said, well, one of my cleaners spotted one of your chaps peeing in the sink in the cleaners room. Oh, I am sorry. I said, I do apologize. He said, oh, it wouldn't be so bad. It's just that she's our newest member. Okay, sorry about that. My man just paid the bill, and that was my first gig. And then, and then it just carried on like that. But the drummer was something else. The drummer was Spinal Tap. Pete. There's so many stories on that one. But Lemmy was lovely. I loved him so much. I'm glad the tour finished, because it killed me. It really did kill me. Yeah, no, it was grueling, 9 months. But I finally, fortunately, you see, also, because I got busted with Wishbone in 84, 4, I think, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And basically my visa was sort of taken away, and yeah. And Ted Nugent did offer at one point at the end of the second tour, asked me if I wanted to go back to America with him and the band. But the visa situation kind of curtailed that one, which was weird, but a shame. You know, so I didn't do that. But Doug Smith, Lemmy's manager, managed to sort me out a visa. So I went back to America, yes, after 10 years of not touring. So, because I like with Dave Stewart and Annie Lennox with the Tourists, when they split up, I was told that Dave and Annie were starting a new job, and did I want to join them? You know, they'd be going to America and stuff, and it was like, I don't have a visa. You know, there's no point in even, you know, there's nothing worse than being a tour manager with a band and seeing your band go off with another tour manager. It's just, yeah, you know, and so that never happened, which was a shame. But Ted Nugent was all right. He was a good man. He was, believe it or not, he was highly professional. It was great. One night what I normally do, you see, is when a band come off, you stand outside the dressing room, make sure, you know, just give them 10, 15 minutes to cool down and change and all of that stuff. Yeah. And I'm standing there, and these 2 guys walk up and go, "We're the police. We think Ted Nugent's on drugs and we'd like to have a word with him." I went, "Oh, yes, please." Because Ted just hates drugs. He just vehemently hates drugs. And I went, "Oh, this is going to be." I said, "Just excuse me a minute. Just let me introduce you." And I said, "Ted, these 2 gentlemen think you're on drugs. I'll do it." I just said, "Gentlemen," and I just closed the door, and I heard Ted from outside just going, giving these guys like, just, whoa, good old Ted. And I came out about 5 minutes later holding an album. Going, "Oh, he's a really nice man, isn't he?" You know, just, yeah, fuck off. You know, you bastards. But yeah, so, but Ted was all right. One night we used to have this, we had these stands, mic stands, with like 3 legs. You know, and a gooseneck. Okay. Right? And this idiot Ted was going wang dang, sweet boom tang and all of that stuff. And this guy's just getting the mic stand and going, so this mic stand's going, quick, wang dang, sweet boom, right? I was like, you know, what the fuck are you doing? So Ted picked up the mic stand and just went, "Yeah," like that, right in the guy's face. And I'm watching it, and this guy just went, and his blood started trickling down his hands. And it was like, oh my God. And like Ted was sort of looked, and he just carried on. And end of the set, you know, he said, you know, it was just, you know, he was just doing that all, you know. And we used to let the audience, fans in for autographs and stuff, you know. It's a thing I started. And his 2 mates came in. And Ted said, "I'm really sorry to, you know," because I cut his nose right there. And his mates are going, "Nah, Ted, he deserved it. He shouldn't have been doing that. You did the right thing there, mate." Just, good for them. Yeah. Good for his friends. And it's just like, you just watch all of this stuff just unfold, and you just, yeah, touring's just something else. You know, it was like with Ted's crew. Now you've got to imagine, they'd come to Europe in '76 was the first tour I did with them. Now they're just doing, you know, like stadiums, you know, stadium rock and everything else. Now they come to Europe, nobody knows him. So now you've got to play the clubs again, right? You know, you've got to start small again. Right. So we did this one club in Berlin, which was small, right? You had to get a lift up, and it just came out, and there's a stage, lift, stage, right? And it is small. And the crew started going, "Oh, we can't play there." well, we can't get all his stacks up there. You can't play there, you know. And it's like, it's not up to you, you know. You're the crew. It's not up to you, man. It's up to Ted whether he plays there. You know, and it was like we'd already discussed it with Ted. It's going to be small, so it's just going to be one stack each,
right?
Not fucking 154. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, and just I couldn't even get in the gig. Right, the spare guitars were actually in the lift. You know, and that's how small it was.
Yeah.
Guitars, lift, stage, and the band had a phenomenal night. Loved every minute of it. But I you know, you sort of got some. You've got to go back to basics on this tour. You've got to go back to basics.
Right.
And they did.
Seem to understand that.
Around it. You know, that was the thing. The crew couldn't get their heads around it. The band could, but the crew couldn't. You know, and then the next time they came over, you know, it was bigger venues. You know, but yet again, the crew just decided that they knew best for Ted sometimes, and it was like, no, you don't do that. You don't cancel a gig. That's not your job. You know, we're doing a festival, and it's bucketing down with rain, absolutely bucketing. And they've got the gear out, and they decide that it's raining so much that they put the gear back. But the audience can see this, so they start rioting. You know, and it's like, no. We didn't do the gig in the end, but it was, you know, just like, by then it was sort of too late, and it was, you know, one big meeting. Who's deciding this, Ted? Is it you deciding this, or is it your crew? You know, because this is ridiculous, you know. But yeah, it was mad. It was absolutely mad. But yeah, Ted was very professional. Ted was good. Don't like his politics, but you know, that's got nothing to do with it. You know, he's a musician,
right.
And he's a good musician, and he was very professional. And he was all right. I liked Ted. Liked working with him, I must admit.
So when did you decide to end this life as a roadie and tour manager?
The final straw was Kid Creole and the Coconuts. That was the final one. I'd kind of been, you know, it was kind of like after 2 years in the Middle East, it was, God, what I really needed some heavy metal. And lo and behold, Motorhead turned up. You know, and that was kind of like, oh, okay, this is killing me. I'm not really that happy, and I hadn't been happy for a while, a few years, and it was. But you know, it was the only job I knew. You know, it was on the road. That's all I knew. And then I got a last-minute gig. You know, Kid Creole and the Coconuts for what a cluster. What do they call it? A cluster something.
I know what word you're thinking of.
Yeah, awful. The most unprofessional musician I've ever met. Awful, terrible. You know, when we got on the bus, you know, there's all the bands sit down and they've got the table on the coach, and then they get this gaffer tape and they go straight across the table, and I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? You know, why are you doing that? And well, man, that's his space. This is my space. And that's it. Nobody comes into my space. And it was like, oh, shit. Really? And then there was like, you know, then they had the Coconuts. Unprofessional. Then we had, let's see, Two Dresses. Then we had Martin the Accountant, so that was all right. But yeah, no, it was horrible. You know, we did this gig and there was a sponsorship deal with a tobacco company, right? You know, which the promoter had set up. And Kid turns up and goes, oh, tobacco, don't want to, I'm not doing this show. Do anything to do with tobacco. I don't, you know, deal with tobacco, you know, hate it. And then, so I rang up the London office and I said, kid's not doing the show. He says, well, I tell you, offer him an extra $2,000. So, hey kid, look, $2,000. Okay, I'll do it. You know, boom, all of a sudden, you know, it's like, oh yeah, no, I'll do it. And the weird thing is, you know, I heard that he had a photo of him and Paul McCartney blown up life size on his front door, the inside of his front door. Right.
Okay.
When I heard that story, I just thought, yeah, the best and the worst, my first and my last. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? You know.
Well, you've experienced it all. You know, the professional and the unprofessional.
Yeah, and there was not many unprofessionals. But do you know what? We went to Europe first. Right? Now I know you think England's with Europe, you know, but over here we think Europe's separate from England. So if I say a European tour, it means not in England, right? And so all through this, 6 weeks, I think it was, something like that. He was never on stage on time once. In fact, it was a given that he'd be at least 15 minutes. He would make the audience wait because he's the star, right? They can wait. I'm the star. They would wait for the star. We got to England, and the time that he toured before, he got slated by the press for being on stage late. Every night on that English tour, he was at the side of the stage with his band 5 minutes before they went on. 5 minutes before they went on, every night, went on stage, every night like that. And yet for 6 weeks, the asshole couldn't be bothered. Unprofessional. You see, the one thing, man, about touring is it's the audience. You know, they've come to places and they've got to get back to places. And if you're on late, they could miss a bus. The promoter could have extra costs incurred. And we've come across that many a times, you know. And so I've had to pull plugs on people and stuff, you know. I've done some pretty naughty, not naughty stuff, but I've done some pretty, you know, pretty stuff to get the show on the road. The show is the most important thing. Showtime is it.
Right.
You know, that is it as far as I'm concerned. You go on at 8, you go on at 8. Not 5 past, you go on at 8. I used to have horrendous problems with Wishbone in the beginning because they were always tuning up and they would always be on like 10 minutes late. It's just not right, just not right. This is before we had, you know, tuning machines and all of that stuff, you know. This is all done by ear, ting, ting, ting. You know, of course, as soon as you walk out the dressing room, boom, you're in a different temperature. It's strange anyway, but, you know, and the audience never knew, but it was just them. You know, no, it's not tuned properly, ding, ding, ding. But so, and that always used to annoy me because I would get it in the ear from promoters. That's another reason for, you know, going on stage on time.
Well, I'll tell you, you know, I've gone to a lot of concerts with my family, and probably half of the concerts I've been to don't start on time.
Wrong.
You always got to wait.
It's wrong. It's wrong. I hate it. I hate it. You know, and that was the thing about being a stage manager. You know, my shows had to go on time. They had to, you know, and I'll punch you out if you stop me. And that happened, you know. So, you know, and I've been punched by stage managers. You know, it's par for the course. It's what we did.
Yeah.
You know? It's the fruit of life.
Well, like I said, they should make a movie out of your life. But then again, I guess anybody who's been a roadie and a tour manager has gone through what you have, and they've all got stories to tell.
They've all got. You see, listen, I'm not unique. You know, I'm only unique because I work for the Beatles. You know, but there's so many other tour managers out there. So many roadies. Excuse me. That could, you know, tell you just the stupid stories. You know, they've all got their own spinal tap moments. Right. You know, and that film just happened to encapsulate a whole tour. You know, well, I did that tour, you know. That's why when I saw Spinal Tap, it was just me. It was, you know, right down to that sort of top lip, I think it is, just that little disease just growing on the top lip of a musician.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that, you know, I've seen it. You know, I've seen that little thing just grow. You know, yeah, I've seen it all. It's when you're coming over, because we'll have to get a bottle of scotch, and I'll tell you some stories.
Well, you know, the plan always is, I say this with my wife, because we want to come when there's the convention in Liverpool
I know your wife
at the end of August. What's that?
Your wife can't listen.
Okay, I'll find a way for her to leave the area. But you know, there's a lot of people now that I know in Liverpool who are, you know, part of the Beatle world, and I want to hang with them. And I certainly want to experience the festival there in the Beatles' hometown, because it's been going on for so many years.
Yeah,
And compare that to, you know, I've been to the fest for Beatle fans here in New York and New Jersey for many years, and to be able to compare the two would be very interesting. And just
yeah,
to hang around Liverpool people, you
yeah.
know, that's another thing that I want to do badly. I've been to England one time, and it wasn't during the end of August period. And I didn't spend enough time in Liverpool, which was my regret. But the next time that I do that, I certainly will. And you're certainly on the list there, Kevin. People
Yeah,
that I
good.
want to, that I have to definitely visit. And this has been a joy talking to you again. And I want to remind everybody about your book,
Ah,
Who's the Redhead on the Roof, which is still available on Kindle. And, you know, maybe if we combine your life with the Beatles and your life as a roadie and road manager, there could be a movie out of that.
well, there's got to be a book first.
Well, you do have the book, but it needs to be more widely circulated and in print form, you know, in physical form, although that doesn't seem to matter to a lot of people these days, but
Yeah, I've
we
been
shall
thinking
see.
about maybe trying to tidy it up a bit and just kindling it again. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
But like I said, there are so many people who would have loved to have been in your shoes.
Mm.
And it's so great that you can share your memories about the Beatles and what followed the Beatles with me here on this channel. So I thank you for that. And we shall definitely stay in touch.
Yes.
And thanks again.
No, thank you very much indeed, Ken. It's been
And
wonderful.
thanks to everyone for watching this. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. And I'll see you all very soon. Take care.